Chapter 2. You laid back as Marie climbed on top of you once more, having covered the window to the room you were both in. "There," she whispered. "Now we are all alone." You smiled at her as your eyes moved down to Marie's almost bare chest. She still wore her bra as neither of you had yet removed your underwear following the incident. "Like what you see?" she asked with a giggle. You nodded, to which she sighed playfully, reaching back from behind herself and cupping her breasts, as though changing her mind on removing her garment. "And here I was thinking maybe you'd rather see more," she cooed as though she were disappointed. You could tell that she was pretending to be disappointed and quickly replied, "Who said I didn't want to see more? When a cake smells good and looks good, do you stop there?" Marie shook her head as she let her garment fall, revealing her chest to you for the first time. It wasn't that you'd never seen a woman's breast before. That wasn't what made this experience a first of its kind, but rather, it was that the two of you had rarely time enough to get this intimate, which made this a first of sorts. With you always working, and with her always busy with the duties of her role as commander of the Senshiro team, what else were you two missing out on? You cupped a breast of hers and felt its warmth. It was like that of a million suns, and yet it didn't scorch you, but merely warmed your own breast along with hers. She smiled as you handled her softly, followed by you moving your hand to her face. Marie placed her hands on your own cheeks and kissed you, allowing you to move your hand back down her body along her spine and to her butt. "There you go," she smiled. "I knew you couldn't keep your hands off for too long." You caressed her thigh as she leaned you back down from the sitting position the two of you had assumed to kiss. "What with all your staring and, I'm sure, daydreaming of this moment, you're rather excited, aren't you?" "Well, maybe a little," you stated from under her. Your faces were nearly touching as she moved around on top of you. You felt her hips lift up from your own before looking just over Marie's head to see a pair of panties dangling from her toe. It fell just behind you, causing you to look back to her face, that now bore a smug grin. But I doubt that those dreams would come anywhere close to how good this will actually be. The two of you entered a deep and lustful kiss, your hand moving across her bare skin, feeling every curve, every soft, supple deposit on her beautiful body. And she did much the same to you, indulging her touch with your own body. You could feel yourself becoming aroused to the stimulation that, in comparison of what you knew would come, was really not all that much. Marie sat up and lifted herself to help allow you remove your underwear, allowing you a full view of her uncovered body. Marie was certainly of desirable figure to you. Her wide hips and thighs, her fine breasts, her kind face, all made her very physically attractive to you, that was no doubt. But you couldn't help but wonder if she felt just as you did lying naked before her. Certainly you wanted to lie with her, but there was an uneasiness at the vulnerability that you had realized in front of her like this. Marie settled back in on top of you, her hair below brushing against your groin. "Ready?" you asked her as she stared down at your crotch. Perhaps finger me first," she said nervously. You nodded, then gently rolled over onto your side so that she was beside you. "Are you nervous as well?" you asked her. She nodded. "Me too. But remember, we can go as slowly as you like, okay?" Marie nodded before feeling your hand run over her. She gasped at the new feeling of her lover touching her like this. Instinctively, she grabbed onto you, but after a little, she moved her own hand down to rub you as you did her. Her body felt warm, as though she could burst into flames at any moment. It was as if every nerve in her body was being excited at once, and yet she liked it. While outside the context of your encounter, the feeling would presumably be overwhelming to the both of you. You both loved it so much at the hands of the other. Marie gazed into your eyes with hers. I think I'm ready," she stated with a small smile. You nodded, kissing her first, then rolling over to on top of her. You planted yet another kiss on her as you lowered your own hips into hers. You were slow to push in, and yet it felt like it was over in an instant. Marie gasped sharply as you entered her, yourself letting out a large sigh. It was slow at first, but she panted even as you both sat still for a moment, before her panting grew harder as your hips moved more aggressively into hers. There was without a doubt something primal in doing this, and yet, hearing her breaths, her moans, her cries for more, echoed by your own, broke you both down to a slight essence of who you were. Every breath expelled from her mixed with your own. Not only your bodies, but your very hearts felt connected. Marie's grasp pushed past your flesh and into your soul, pulling something forth that had not been so prominent outside of this context. You realized what drove you was not the feelings within your own loins, but rather knowing your actions pleased her. You wanted to please her, to make her happy, but not just happy, more complete. And when you searched her eyes, you could see that she sought the same from you. The two of you pushed harder until at last Marie climaxed, digging her fingers into you and pulling herself now physically close. Your bodies were no longer exposed at all to the open, but merged together. You pumped faster for a moment until at last you finished inside of her, to which Marie collapsed into you, softly murmuring, "That was..." Before she could finish, she merely sighed and gave you a deep kiss. You rolled over onto your back in order to catch your breath, then looked over to her as she did the same. The quick rise and fall of her breast was all you could focus on until at last she managed to look over to you and crawled back, lying down on you. You gazed into her blonde hair as she pushed her face into your chest, the both of you taking a moment to calm down. "Marie," you whispered, petting her gently. "Oui?" she asked, not moving from you. "Do you think that we could do this more often?" you asked her. She giggled. "I don't know. We'll have to see how I feel a few hours after this," she joked. "No, I mean, just spend our time together. I mean, don't get me wrong, sex is nice and all, but..." You trailed as you pushed a lock of hair free from her face. "It's only that way because I'm having it with you." "Oh, you," she started to say. No, really, Marie, I mean it." "I love you," you stated. Marie gazed at you a little before kissing you. "I love you too," she replied. I was thinking that we're always so busy, we hardly ever have enough time together, and maybe we can do something to make sure that we have at least a day for just ourselves," you stated to her. Marie caressed you a little before replying, "Yeah, that sounds nice." You smiled at her and set hand on her bottom once more. "And maybe, if you're up to it, we can do more of this." "Well, if you want any more of this gâteau, it's all for you," she mocked playfully. "Is that an invitation?" you asked, getting in the mood once more. "Or perhaps a challenge," she said, playfully pushing off of you and standing upright. "If you want me, come catch me. After all, we have all day, don't we?" You smiled as you got up and began the mock chase until finally you caught her, as the two of you became closer that day in many more ways than one.